Welcome to Note Lab Mode.
Great to be here.
This is where we dive deep into fascinating research, pull out the really important nuggets, help you get informed quickly.
And hopefully spark some interest along the way.
Exactly. Today, we are plunging into some, well, frankly, mind-blowing new research about artificial intelligence. Its evolution, its adoption, it's happening so fast.
It really is. We're going to try and unpack how AI is changing, well, pretty much everything. How we work, the global competitive scene.
Yeah, it's a big one. But before we jump right in, just a quick word from our sponsor.
This deep dive is brought to you by cloutfit.ai.
That's CLOUTFIT.ai.
Right. If you've ever seen influencer content and thought, how do I turn that buzz into actual sales? Cloutfit.ai is your answer.
It connects influencer outfits, what they're wearing, directly to your product inventory, makes their content instantly shoppable.
Which means more sales for you, higher order value. It's pretty slick. So stop scrolling, maybe start selling. Visit cloutfit.ai to learn more.
CLOUTFIT.ai. Check them out. All right, let's get back to AI. Our mission today really is to unpack what the latest research is telling us about this explosion in AI growth. It just feels like change is happening incredibly fast right now, doesn't it?
Oh, absolutely. That feeling, it's completely backed up by the research we've been digging into. One of the headline findings is stark, actually. It says AI, user growth, usage, and the capital spending behind it. It's all described with one word: unprecedented.
Unprecedented. Wow. That's a strong word. How does this speed actually compare to previous big tech waves?
Yeah, it's a good question. The research offers a really striking comparison. Think about the internet. The first wave, it took about 23 years to reach 90% adoption among its total user base outside North America.
Okay, 23 years? Seems reasonable for something that big?
Right. Now contrast that with a leading US-based large language model, an LLM, like ChatGPT. It took just 3 years to hit 90% of its current total users outside North America.
3 years versus 23.
Exactly. Now, there are caveats, right? That 3-year number is specifically mobile app users, and the app wasn't available everywhere instantly. But still, the difference in scale, 23 versus 3, it's genuinely staggering.
Wow. Yeah, that really paints a picture of consumer adoption speed. And ChatGPT itself is kind of the poster child for this, right?
It really is. It's a key indicator. The research shows by April 2025, it hit 800 million weekly active users.
800 million weekly.
Weekly. That's 8 times growth in just 17 months. And it had the fastest user ramp up ever for a standalone product. Hit 1 million users in, 5 days?
5 days. That's insane.
We just haven't seen that kind of velocity before.
So consumers are flocking to it. But it's not just individuals, right? The whole ecosystem, developers, companies, they're moving fast too.
Absolutely. The research confirms that big time. Look at, say, NVIDIA's developer ecosystem. They make the chips powering a lot of this. Their developer base went from 1 million in 2018 to 6 million by 2025.
6 times growth in 7 years.
Yeah, and AI startups using their tech almost quadrupled in just 4 years. Applications using those specialized chips, the GPUs, more than doubled in the same time frame.
So the engine and the builders are multiplying like crazy.
It's happening across the board.
Okay, so the feeling of unprecedented change, it's not just hype. It's backed by numbers for users, devs, infrastructure. But what makes this speed, fundamentally different from the early internet days?
That's a great point. What's really interesting, according to the research, is how it spread. The early internet, it kind of diffused out, Started strong in the US, then spread more steadily region by region.
Right, took time to reach everywhere.
But AI, especially consumer stuff like ChatGPT, it basically hit the world stage all at once. The research shows it grew simultaneously across most regions right from the beginning.
Ah, so it was a global phenomenon from day one.
Pretty much. That concurrent worldwide explosion in both users and the ecosystem. That's a big reason why this feels faster, more pervasive than those earlier tech shifts.
Okay, that makes sense. So let's shift gears a bit. What's actually powering this explosion? It can't just be viral hype. There must be some core tech and economic factors driving it.
Definitely. The research points to a really key dynamic here. On one hand, AI model compute costs the cost to train the biggest, most powerful models are high and actually getting higher.
High and rising.
Yeah, but on the other hand, inference cost per token, the cost to actually use the trained model are falling dramatically.
Wait, unpack that distinction. Training versus inference.
So training these huge frontier AI models, It's incredibly expensive. The research estimates the cost grew something like 2,400 times over 8 years. Some projects now cost, get this, upwards of $1 billion.
$1 billion just to train one model.
Just to train it. That's the high and rising compute cost part. Sounds like a massive barrier, right?
Yeah, for almost everyone.
It certainly is for building the absolute biggest, baddest models from scratch.
But, and this is the crucial bit, the research contrasts this sharply with the other side. Inference costs are plummeting. Inference being actually using it day to day, asking questions, generating stuff.
Exactly. The cost per query, per image generated, per token processed, that's falling incredibly fast. The research has this striking chart comparing it to older tech. The relative cost of using ChatGPT for a typical response has fallen way faster relative to its launch than even things like electricity or computer memory did back in their day.
So it's insanely expensive to build the AI brain, but getting cheaper and cheaper every day to actually use it.
That's the core dynamic, and the research links this to something called technology compounding. We're seeing these massive year-over-year improvements everywhere.
Compounding how?
Training compute capacity is growing like 360% a year. Algorithmic efficiency gains, 200% a year. Supercomputer performance, up 150%. The number of powerful new AI models coming out, up 167% annually. It's all multiplying.
So everything's getting faster, better, cheaper to run all at the same time.
Pretty much. Models get better, the infrastructure gets better, it feeds on itself.
And this obviously requires just colossal investment in the actual hardware, the data centers.
Oh, absolutely. The research highlights the CapEx capital expenditure from the big 6 U.S. tech companies. Apple, NVIDIA, Microsoft, Alphabet, Amazon, AWS, Meta.
The giants.
Their collective spending grew 63% year over year, hitting $212 billion in 2024. And that spending curve, it just shoots upwards right when AI takes off. You see it in global cloud revenue, too, growing 37% a year for the decade leading up to 2024. It's a massive build-out.
Building all that infrastructure, running all those computations, that must take a staggering amount of electricity.
It absolutely does. The research points out data centers used about 1.5% of all global electricity in 2024. But the key thing is their consumption grew around 12% per year since 2017.
12% per year.
Yeah, that's over 4 times faster than the growth in total global electricity use. And the U.S. accounts for a huge chunk, like 45% of that global data center power consumption. It's a major and rapidly growing demand on the grid.
Okay, wow. So bring it back to the costs. Why is that falling inference costs so absolutely critical for driving all this adoption we talked about?
This is where the research talks about tech's perpetual AHA. It's this historical pattern, right? Costs drop, performance goes up, and boom, adoption explodes. That fuels more innovation, more investment, and the cycle repeats.
We've seen it before with other tech.
Exactly. And with AI, that dramatically falling cost to use the trained models, it suddenly makes powerful AI accessible and affordable for tons of developers and businesses who could never dream of training a billion-dollar model themselves.
It lowers the barrier to entry for creating new stuff.
Precisely. It makes it cheap enough to experiment, to build new AI-powered apps and services that's directly driving the huge user and ecosystem growth we saw earlier. The cost of the key ingredient is dropping, so everyone's rushing into the kitchen.
Makes sense. Though you mentioned earlier this idea, the Jevons paradox, where efficiency leads to more usage.
Yeah, the research touches on that. It's this potential irony, right? As AI compute gets more efficient, we might end up using so much more of it that the total demand for compute, and therefore electricity, could actually skyrocket and strain resources like the grid. More efficiency leading to more consumption. It's a possibility.
Okay, so AI started primarily with text, right? Chatbots and the like. But it's clearly moving beyond that now. The research talks a lot about multimodal AI. What exactly is that?
Multimodal AI basically means models that can handle and understand multiple types of data inputs at the same time, not just text, but images, audio, video, integrating all these senses.
Like how humans process the world.
Kinda, yeah. The research tracks this evolution, from early steps like OpenAI's CLIP in 2021, which connected vision and language, to newer models like Meta's ImageBind and Chameleon. Now, the latest frontier systems in 2024, 2025, things like GPT-4o, Claude 3, Google's Gemini, they're described as fully multimodal.
And are we actually seeing a lot more of these multi-sense models appearing?
Oh, dramatically more. The research highlights let me check the number. Yeah, a massive plus 1,150% increase in large-scale multimodal models released in just 2 years, from 2022 to 2024.
Wow, over 1,000% increase. The industry is clearly pushing hard in this direction.
Absolutely. Building systems that can interact with the world using more than just text is a huge focus.
So what are the practical benefits, like for you or me or someone using this stuff at work?
The payoff can be pretty significant. The research gives some good examples. Think about a field engineer. They could take a photo of broken equipment, add a quick voice note describing the problem, and the AI understands both to help diagnose it,
Okay, yeah, I can see that.
or a doctor dictating notes while the AI simultaneously looks at an X-ray image to help draft a medical report.
Oh.
Or maybe a business analyst querying charts, pulling info from call transcripts, and cross-referencing audio clips all at the same time within one system.
That allows for a much richer, faster understanding by pulling together different kinds of information.
Exactly. It mirrors how we often deal with complex situations using multiple information streams.
Makes a lot of sense. And it's not just about understanding the world better, it's also about AI starting to actually do things.
Yeah.
This brings us to AI agents. The research says they're moving beyond just talking to doing work.
Right. This is a big shift highlighted in the research. We're moving away from those earlier chatbots, which were mostly reactive and stuck within fairly rigid scripts.
Yeah, they can answer questions, but not much else.
Exactly. Now we're seeing the rise of intelligent, you could say proactive AI processes, agents that can actually plan and execute sequences of actions across different software platforms, or even navigate the web to complete tasks for you. They're designed to automate work.
So like superpowered virtual assistants, is there much buzz around these agents?
The interest is huge, undeniable. The research points to global Google searches for the term AI agent just exploding up over 1,000%, specifically plus 1,088% in the 16 months between Jan 2024 and May 2025.
That's a massive surge in public interest. Are the big companies launching these kinds of things?
They absolutely are, and fast. The research mentions several recent launches from major players. OpenAI has its operator in research preview. Salesforce launched Agent Force, which is generally available. Anthropic has Claude 3.5 doing computer use tasks, also in preview. Amazon's got Nova Act.
And what can these agents actually do?
They're designed for tasks like handling customer support cases from start to finish automatically, tracking complex orders across different systems, or even kind of wild controlling your computer screen, clicking buttons, typing text to perform tasks you'd normally do yourself.
Whoa. So AI is moving from just giving you info to actively working for you.
That's the core idea, moving beyond the screen, doing work, and that naturally leads into the physical world too.
Ah, right. You mentioned physical agents.
Yeah, the research shows this intelligence isn't staying confined to digital spaces. It's increasingly entering the physical world. It talks about building an AI-native infrastructure for the physical world.
Physical agents, like robots, self-driving cars, that kind of thing.
Exactly that, and autonomous systems more broadly. The research provides some really compelling examples. Look at autonomous vehicles, self-driving cars. Waymo's robotaxis in San Francisco went from basically zero market share to 27% of all ride shares in just 20 months.
27% in less than 2 years.
Yeah, August 2023 to April 2025. And look at Tesla's full self-driving. The cumulative miles driven by cars using it increased roughly 100 times in just 33 months, hitting millions of miles.
100-fold increase in miles driven autonomously.
And there's a quote from Elon Musk mentioned about how for one version of their FSD software, they replaced something like 330,000 lines of traditional C++ code with neural networks. AI taking over the driving logic.
So AI is becoming mainstream on our roads. What other physical world examples does the research highlight? Are there others?
Oh yeah, it shows AI tackling jobs in all sorts of physical domains. There's a company called Applied Intuition providing AI software for vehicle intelligence, not just cars, but trucking, construction, even defense. They were serving 18 top global automakers by 2024, up from 0 in 2016.
Okay, defense too?
Yep, Indural's mentioned seeing double-digit year-over-year revenue growth for their AI-enabled autonomous defense systems. Then you shift to resources. Cobalt Metals uses AI, they call it a machine prospector, to find mineral deposits, apparently finding significantly more discoveries per dollar spent than the industry average.
AI finding gold, Or lithium, I guess.
Something like that. And in farming, Carbon Robotics has these AI-driven robots called laser weeder. They've weeded over 230,000 acres, zapping weeds with lasers and prevented the use of over 100,000 gallons of herbicide.
Laser weeding robots. Seriously.
Seriously, the research includes quotes about how this helps with farm labor shortages and allows for potentially 24/7 operation. So yeah, AI is definitely leaving the data center and getting its virtual hands dirty in the real world.
Okay, this leaps into the physical world. Plus, agents doing tasks. It leads right into how AI is changing work itself. The research talks about cognitive automation happening alongside the physical kind. It feels like AI's ability to do thinking tasks has improved incredibly quickly.
It really, really has. The research notes just an astonishing pace. Think about it. In the 3 years since ChatGPT basically launched to the public, AI's cognitive ability has jumped from roughly a high school student level to performing like a mid-level employee on many tasks.
High school to mid-level pro in 3 years.
Yeah.
That's a very fast climb.
It's incredibly rapid progress on cognitive skills.
So how are companies reacting to this? Are they just playing around with it, or are they actually, changing how they operate?
The research suggests many are moving well beyond just experimenting. There are some powerful quotes indicating mandatory adoption strategies are emerging. Tobias Lütke, the CEO of Shopify, has that now famous line.
Oh, the one about not losing your job to AI, but to someone using AI.
That's the one. And he adds, stagnation is slow motion failure. It's a pretty clear message.
Yeah, hard to argue with that framing.
And then there's the CEO of Duolingo, Luis van On. He sent out an internal memo, mentioned in the research, declaring Duolingo will be AI first.
AI first. What does that mean in practice?
Well, the memo outlines specific constraints, like considering AI use in hiring decisions, in performance reviews, and only approving new headcount, new hires, if the work absolutely cannot be automated by AI first.
Wow. Only hire if a human is truly necessary.
That's the implication. Their stated goal is to scale content creation decades faster using AI. These aren't just suggestions. These are becoming core business strategies.
Okay, those are specific companies. What about the broader trends? Are lots of firms adopting AI?
The data suggests it's ramping up quickly. According to research cited from the U.S. Census Bureau, the percentage of U.S. firms using AI jumped 21% just in the first quarter of 2025 compared to the previous quarter, reaching around 7% of companies surveyed.
7% might not sound huge, but that 21% quarterly jump is significant.
It shows momentum, and when you ask why companies are doing it, Morgan Stanley research indicates the top goals are productivity improvements, both broad internal savings and making specialized workers more efficient. After that comes using AI for customer-facing stuff, revenue, satisfaction, and speeding up product development.
So efficiency is the main driver. Is there actual data showing it works, that AI boosts productivity?
Early data seems promising. The research mentions one study from April 2023 that looked at customer support agents. Those using AI saw their productivity increase by 14%.
14%, that's a solid gain.
It suggests tangible benefits are definitely possible, yeah.
Okay, so AI's cognitive skills are soaring, companies are adopting it strategically, it seems to boost productivity. But the big question, what does this mean for jobs? Are we seeing a shift in the kinds of jobs available?
The job posting data definitely shows a major shift. Looking at the U.S. from January 2018 to April 2025, AI job postings went up a massive 448%.
Nearly 450% increase in AI jobs. Okay, what about other tech jobs?
Over that exact same 7-year period, postings for U.S. non-AI IT jobs actually decreased by 9%.
Wow, so a huge surge in demand for AI skills and a slight dip in traditional IT roles.
That's what the data suggests for postings, yeah. A clear shift in demand within the tech sector itself.
But does that mean overall job losses? Historically, tech advancements haven't always led to less employment, right?
That's a really important point, and the research touches on this historical context. If you look at long-term charts, like the one showing U.S. non-farm labor productivity and employment growth since way back in 1947, you see that overall job growth has historically happened alongside big productivity gains driven by major tech cycles. Think mini computers, PCs, the desktop internet, the mobile internet.
So efficiency went up, but total employment also went up over time.
That's been the historical pattern, yes. And you have figures like Jensen Huang from NVIDIA arguing that AI isn't primarily about job destruction. His perspective, mentioned in the research, is more about closing the technology divide.
Closing the divide how?
by enabling people who aren't programmers to essentially program using natural language AI, by helping address labor shortages in certain areas, and ultimately by potentially increasing global GDP. It's a view that suggests AI could empower more people and create new kinds of value and work, rather than just being a zero-sum replacement game in the long run.
That's a more optimistic and nuanced take than just robots are taking our jobs.
Yeah.
Okay, so this leads us into the competitive dynamics. It sounds like an incredibly intense space right now.
Oh, hugely intense. The research highlights what it calls AI monetization threats and points specifically to three big factors: rising competition, the momentum of open source, and the rise of China as a major player.
Let's break those down. Rising competition and open source. How are they linked?
They're very closely linked. The rise of powerful open source AI models is a massive disruptive force right now.
You mean models like Meta's Llama, stuff people can download and use more freely?
Exactly. Models like Llama 3 or others like DeepSeek are rapidly catching up in performance to the big proprietary closed source models, the GPT-4s, the Claudes, the Geminis.
Catching up in quality.
On many benchmarks, yes. But they offer huge advantages. They're available at a tiny fraction of the cost, sometimes free. Companies can fine-tune them on their own private data, and they can be deployed on standard, commodity hardware, not just expensive, specialized cloud infrastructure.
So developers and companies don't have to rely on the big, expensive, closed models anymore to build really capable AI features.
That's a major takeaway. The research emphasizes that developers, who are often the early adopters pushing the envelope, find the flexibility, the customization, and especially the cost-effectiveness of open source incredibly appealing.
Makes sense. Developers like to tinker and control things.
Right. And Meta's CEO, Mark Zuckerberg, actually predicted back in May 2025 that open source would likely become the dominant type of model developers use this year.
The dominant type. Wow. Is the data backing that up?
The download numbers for Llama are certainly suggestive. The research shows downloads hit 1.16 million by April 2025. That's a 33-fold increase. It's massive adoption.
Okay, so huge pressure from open source. Then there's the third factor, China's rise. The research frames this as an AI space race.
Yeah, that's the language used. It's seen as having potentially profound implications for the global balance of power. The research includes quotes from tech leaders like Meta's CTO and OpenAI's Sam Altman, highlighting the incredibly high stakes.
Stakes like?
Like the potential for misuse by authoritarian regimes, the impact on economic competitiveness, national security. It's seen as a foundational technology battle, and China's advancements are described as rapid, accelerated by national strategies like Made in China 2025 and deep integration of AI into strategic sectors.
Is China actually matching or even leading in some AI capabilities now?
The research presents benchmark data suggesting they're making huge strides. For example, Alibaba's Qwen 2.5 Max model reportedly surpassed other leading models, including GPT-4o and Claude 3.5, on some specific reasoning tests earlier this year.
This past them. Okay.
And Baidu launched its Ernie 4.5 turbo model in April 2025, priced significantly cheaper than Western competitors, while apparently matching or beating some performance benchmarks. They're competing hard on both performance and cost.
And you mentioned earlier, China seems to be leading in deploying AI in the physical world too, like industrial robots.
Yes, the research points that out. China had a higher installed base of industrial robots in 2023 than the rest of the world combined. There also seems to be a difference in public perception highlighted in the research.
How so?
A survey showed 89% of respondents in China agreed that AI and robotics have more benefits than drawbacks. In the US, that number was only 39%. That societal acceptance difference is likely another factor in adoption speed and direction.
89% versus 39%. That's a huge gap in outlook.
It is. So if you tie all this competition stuff together, you've got model performance converging across different players. You've got costs dropping, especially for inference. You've got powerful open source models undercutting the incumbents. All this weakens the pricing power of those early leaders.
Makes it harder for them to charge premium prices.
Exactly. And then layer on the US-China rivalry. It adds this geopolitical dimension. Nations start thinking about sovereign AI needing their own domestic capabilities. AI innovation becomes not just a business advantage, but a matter of, quote, national posture.
Okay, so intense competition, open source pressure, geopolitical stakes. Which brings us back to the money. Given the huge costs we talked about, training, infrastructure, or companies actually planning to make this profitable, the research asks that directly, right? Usage plus cost plus loss growth, Unprecedented.
Mm.
What about future monetization plus profits?
Yeah, it's the billion-dollar question, maybe literally. And the research itself acknowledges this challenge up front. One of the source titles implies it's a likely long way to profitability for
Yeah,
many.
long way.
It recognizes the bruising competition and the heavy capital investment needed. But importantly, it also highlights some examples of incredibly fast early monetization happening in certain segments of the AI market.
So some parts are making money quickly. Where?
The research points to some really impressive revenue growth ramps for certain AI-native companies. Anthropic, for example, their API and generative search revenue apparently grew 20 times, hitting a $2 billion annualized run rate in just 18 months.
20 times growth to 2 billion ARR in a year and a half.
Yeah. And Glean, which does enterprise search and agents, saw its revenue grow 10 times to $100 million ARR in about 2 years. There's also research from Stripe mentioned showing that the top AI companies in 2024 reached $5 million in annual recurring revenue, ARR, about 35% faster than the top SaaS companies did back in 2018.
So where AI is finding a market fit, the revenue growth can be incredibly fast, even faster than the previous generation of software companies.
That seems to be the case for some startups, but then you have the massive tech incumbents. They have a different kind of advantage, right? Their existing user base.
Billions of users across platforms like Meta, Google, Microsoft, Apple.
Exactly. The research contrasts their scale billions of users with even ChatGPT's impressive 800 million. These giants are rapidly integrating AI features into the products people already use every day, and the adoption within those existing ecosystems is happening at a scale only they can command.
Can you give some numbers on how those incumbent rollouts are going?
The scale is just staggering. Microsoft Copilot, 15 billion cumulative chats by the end of 2024, 10 billion of those just in 2024 alone.
15 billion chats.
Meta AI monthly active users across Facebook, Instagram, WhatsApp were approaching a billion by April 2025. Mark Zuckerberg predicted it would be the leading AI assistant for over a billion people. Google's AI Overviews feature in search reached 1.5 billion users by May 2025.
These numbers are almost hard to comprehend. Billions of interactions.
And look at creative tools. Canva's Magic Studio, basically, AI image generation and editing didn't even exist until late 2023. By May 2025, it had generated 16 billion images.
16 billion images in about 18 months.
Yeah. It shows how quickly these features can scale when embedded in platforms people already use. And on the business side, Microsoft's AI product revenue hit a $13 billion annual run rate by Jan 2025, up 175% year over year. GitHub Copilot adopted by over 77,000 organizations. Salesforce's Agentforce got 3,000 paying customers just 90 days after launch. The adoption within enterprises is also moving fast for incumbents.
Okay, so incumbents are leveraging their scale massively. What about AI and more specialized software for specific industries like legal or healthcare?
That's another area highlighted for rapid growth. The research points to specialized AI software companies serving large service industries seeing significant annual recurring revenue, or ARR, growth.
Like who?
Examples mentioned include AnySphere Cursor AI for software engineering, going from maybe $1 million to $300 million ARR in just over 2 years. A Bridge in healthcare, jumping from $50 million to $117 million ARR in only 5 months after a big partnership. Harvey in legal tech, growing from $10 million to $70 million ARR in 15 months. AlphaSense in financial services, roughly tripling its ARR in 2 years.
So AI tailored for specific professional workflows is also seeing very fast commercial traction.
It seems so. But it's a big, but even with these impressive revenue and usage numbers, the underlying economics, as the research stresses, remain challenging for many.
Because of the competition and the massive costs.
Exactly. That bruising competition, the huge capital needed for data centers, chips, training, it all puts pressure on profitability. Even though inference costs per use are falling, the sheer exponential growth in usage means the total cost to serve can still be enormous.
So it's a bit of a paradox. Incredible growth, but maybe not incredible profits yet for everyone.
For many, yes. The research points to that historical pattern. Big tech advances needing huge upfront investment often face disappointing returns initially. Protecting yourself from competition becomes key. It really begs the question, as the research implies. Which of these companies will successfully navigate the economics, fight off the competition, and ultimately prove the naysayers wrong? You know, become the next Amazon or Tesla that burned cash for years before achieving massive scale and profitability. It's still early days to know for sure.
That makes sense. It's a high-stakes, high-cost race.
Yeah.
Okay, let's try to wrap up on a more forward-looking, maybe even optimistic note that came up in the research. This idea of AI unlocking global internet access.
Ah, yes. This is one of the potentially most transformative aspects discussed. The research highlights it with the line, global internet user ramps powered by AI from get-go. Growth we have not seen likes of before.
Growth we haven't seen the likes of before.
Hmm.
What does that mean?
It connects to the estimated 2.6 billion people around the world who are still not online today. That's roughly a third of the global population. The idea is that low-cost satellite internet could finally bring access to many of them.
And the research mentions SpaceX's Starlink specifically here.
It does, yeah. As a key driver, Starlink hit over 5 million subscribers globally by early 2025. That's over 200% annual growth over the last few years, and its coverage map is rapidly expanding, reaching previously hard-to-connect areas.
So instead of needing expensive cables or cell towers, people in remote places can get online via satellite. Okay. But how does AI fit into their first experience of the internet?
This is where it gets really interesting. The research speculates that for these potentially billions of new users, their very first taste of the internet might be fundamentally different from ours.
Different how?
They might not start with a web browser or a search engine box. They might start by directly interacting with an AI, perhaps talking to a machine in their own native language, asking it questions, getting information, maybe even having it perform tasks for them.
So skipping the whole browser search paradigm we grew up with.
Potentially, yeah. The research floats this idea of an agent-first internet experience,
Legend first.
where an AI agent becomes your primary interface to the digital world. It understands your local language, your context, and it navigates and interacts with various platforms and services on your behalf.
Wow. That could completely change the game.
The research suggests it could significantly disrupt existing tech hierarchies. If the main interface isn't the app or the website, but the intelligent agent that talks to all of them for you, then the value might shift dramatically. It really connects back to that idea of AI being potentially the greatest opportunity to close the technology divide, making powerful technology genuinely accessible and useful to billions more people globally.
Okay, wow, that's a powerful vision. So just to quickly recap this whirlwind, we've seen research showing AI's growth speed is truly unprecedented. Usage, investment. We dove into the tech foundations, massive compute needs, but crucially, falling costs to use AI. We saw AI expanding beyond text into multimodal fences and proactive agents that can actually do work.
Then we saw it moving into the physical world, self-driving cars, robots in factories, farms, even finding minerals.
Right, and its huge impact on work, demanding new skills, pushing companies towards AI-first strategies, showing early productivity gains, but also raising questions alongside historical context about jobs.
Plus, that incredibly intense competitive landscape, tech giants battling startups, the disruptive force of open source, and the high-stakes geopolitical rivalry, especially with China.
And finally, the challenge of monetization, super fast revenue growth for some, but huge costs and a likely long path of profitability for many, contrasted with the potential for AI to bring billions more people online through entirely new interfaces.
It really does feel like AI is just accelerating, embedding itself everywhere, maybe even faster than the internet did.
It does, which leads perfectly into a final thought, maybe something provocative for you, our listener, to chew on.
Yeah, absolutely. Given everything we've discussed, this incredible speed, the shifting economics, the way it's poised to change work, remember that quote, you won't lose your job to AI, but to someone using AI. And thinking about that potential for global reach, it really brings the question home.
Yeah.
What role is AI going to play in your world, in your work, your industry, your interests? How are you going to engage with this technology as it continues to fundamentally reshape how we interact with information, with tools, and with each other? Something to think about.
Definitely something to think about. Thank you for walking us through all that complex research.
My pleasure. Fascinating stuff.
And a huge thank you again to our sponsor, Cloutfit.ai. Remember, that's CLOUTFIT.ai. They connect influencer content directly to your product inventory, making it shoppable and driving sales. Check them out at Cloutfit.ai.
CLOUTFIT.ai.
If you found this deep dive useful, please do share it with friends or colleagues who are trying to keep up with this rapidly changing AI landscape.
And make sure you subscribe to NoteLab mode so you don't miss our next dive into fascinating research.
Until next time, thanks for listening.